Hello, this is Mayor Chris Bollwage, and as we begin a new year with our city, we are doing them through Zoom in order to protect not only the guests, but those folks in City Hall as well. So the City of Elizabeth and the County of Union still have plenty of COVID-19 vaccines and tests are available. Here in our city, you can visit ucnjvaccine.org, click on either Union County or the Peterstown Community Center, or simply call 908 820 4250. You can visit the Peterstown Community Center and get a vaccine on Tuesdays from 1 to 7 p.m., Wednesdays from 2 to 7, and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 2:30. The Sampson Center on Anna Street is open for testing on Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Wednesdays, 9 a.m. to 8 as well. Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and vaccines will be available on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. It's a lot of information. You could just visit our website or call our public information office at 908 820 4124. Keep in mind that masks are required and no food or drink or smoking, and especially no chewing gum 30 minutes prior. A photo ID is required, and anyone under the age of 18 must be accompanied by an adult. As always, insurance is not necessary nor is it needed, but if you have coverage, please bring a copy of your insurance card. For vaccines, kids will need a copy of their birth certificate and a parent or guardian to sign a consent form. Vaccines work. Here in the city of Elizabeth, we are over 98% vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated and you're in a public setting or indoors, continue to follow the social distance rules. Wear a mask or a face covering when you cannot socially distance, and wash your hands as frequently as possible. And keep in mind, this pandemic is not going away. We need to live with this, so personal responsibility is extremely important. And if you have any questions, you can reach us on our social media sites, as I said earlier, or simply call the Public Information Office at 908 820 4124. Now, I'm pleased to be joined on this week's show by Miss Sheralyn Hernandez, who's going to talk to us about Tier 1 credit. I met her at an event about a month ago, and the information she was providing was fascinating, and I think some of our tenants and some of our representatives and the people who live in the city may be interested in what she has to offer. Sheralyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Sheralyn, the first thing we'd like to ask our new guests, especially those that have never been on, is to simply tell us a little about yourself, your background, your schooling, where you're from, and things of that nature.
So, yes, as you know, my name is Sheralyn, and I am actually a mom to a 10-year-old daughter. I'm from the Dominican Republic. Was born here, but parents descend from Dominican Republic. So I am bilingual in both Spanish and English, and I have a background in healthcare administration, but I have also crossed the lines into learning more about credit repair, consumer law, etc., anything that has to do related to our personal credit. So this is why we're here, and this is why I created the Tier 1 credit business.
So, where do you work out of, Sheralyn?
So I have a home office, so I work from home off of my computer systems and so on. So it's a home-based business, but I go and visit some clients as well when needed, for those who want to come visit as well. But I mostly do everything home-based virtually, or again, we can arrange visits to see clients.
So, Sheralyn, tell us exactly what led to the establishment of Tier 1 credit. And since considering you have a healthcare background, it's an interesting segue.
Yeah, so as even though I was working in the healthcare field, I ran into issues as a single mom as far as being able to rent a two-bedroom apartment for me and my daughter. And the reason for that was because of credit. Despite the fact that income was acceptable for their point, but my credit was not what didn't meet the requirements. So the fact that I was, I had funds to pay for this apartment, but I couldn't because my credit was not up to par, really was devastating to me. And that's where I kind of came across learning about credit repair. So I learned how to repair my own credit to the point where I was able to get the apartment at that time. So I experimented with it a few times, but there was just thinking about there's other single mothers as well that were probably going through what I was going through at that point. So the fact that, someone was able to control a credit score, was able to control how comfortable me and my daughter were living, really kind of upsetted me. And that's what kind of led for me to learn about credit repair and consumer law and how I can repair to meet the standards that we had to meet these days.
So what makes up a credit score before we get into more in the tier one service? I'm
So,
confused on what makes that up as well, Sheralyn. So
sure. So
and is it public knowledge, a credit score?
it actually is public knowledge as just far as implementing it. Some people don't know what has what gives you higher points. So for instance, as most people know, you can get a credit score that goes from a 300 to an 850. The maximum is 850. And out of that 850, we can control at least a good portion of those points. I would say at least I would say 700, at least a good 700 points you can control off of your own behavior. So for instance, 35% of your credit score accounts for your payment history. This is why late payments are the biggest effect to your credit report because they have the biggest impact. They account for 35% of your credit score. Then followed by that, we have 30% of your credit score is calculated by utilization, meaning how much credit you use based on what you have available. Then we go over to the 15% range, which is your credit age, how long you've been responsible for credit. They want to see how long you've been able to handle credit. That accounts for 15% of your credit score. Then you have 10%, which accounts for the types of credits accounts that you have, meaning if you have credit cards, if you have loans, student loans, and so on, that accounts for 10% of your credit score. And then finally, the final 10% is the credit inquiries, meaning how many times you've tried to obtain credit will also impact and account for 10% of your credit score. So these are the 5 factors that us as consumers can actually control with our behavior, with handling our finances, paying everything on time, and so on.
So Sheralyn, does it matter when you listed the number of items for credit scores? Does it matter if it's a student loan, say, versus a car loan? Is one of the other weighed more heavily?
No, but student loans are in a way a good loans to have because there's always multiple. You don't just have one. Usually, a car loan is one. It could be a short, usually it could be a long-term one. But student loans, there's so many of them. When we apply for student loans, that it gives us more credibility, meaning we have more accounts open because student loans usually run in multiple accounts, more than one. So it gives us more leverage as far as having a higher credit score because of those loans, as opposed to they are good until they go into default. So that's student loans are a different theory, but we want to keep student loans because they help us build credit if we do not have any credit.
So Sheralyn, what are some of the areas that you cannot control as a consumer?
So some of the areas you can control is as far as the scoring model that are when you go to lenders. For instance, if you're going to purchase a home, that mortgage officer might use a different scoring system, and you can't control exactly what they're looking at. For instance, there's 2 types of credit scoring models, which is a FICO score and a Vantage score. Now, FICO scoring models are usually used by mortgage lenders or auto loans, and they can use any scoring model they have. For instance, there's about 10 FICO scoring versions under the FICO scoring model. They can pick and choose which ones they're going to utilize depending on their company's policy. So we can't control what they're looking at within our credit score. For instance, on a Vantage score, if someone is utilizing a Vantage score, they might add your most recent credit behavior, where on the FICO scoring model, they might look at something, they want to count for something that's been past 45 days. So that's just where the areas that we kind of can't control as far as that. So again, behavior might be one thing. It all depends on the scoring model that's being used to determine your credit score.
But the most important thing of the conversation we just had is paying your bills on time.
Yes. That is the most that accounts for the biggest factor. I know it's one of the areas where people kind of fall into lowering their credit score the most because of that. And that's why it's always recommended to have everything on auto pay, because for some reason you forgot something, that you owed, on this date, and now it went into default. You have a late payment because you maybe forgot. So that's why sometimes having your credit cards or payments on auto pay automatically deducts it from your debit card or so on, so that you never go into default. So that's one of the biggest factors, because sometimes you have to take accountability that there are IT issues, there could be issues with staffing in the office if it's a manual type of transaction. So you always want to give yourself automatic payments to be done prior to the actual due date to avoid late payments, because that has the biggest factor. The higher your credit score is, the bigger the drop will be in your credit score from having a late payment. So if you have like a 750 credit score and you have one late payment, that one late payment could drop you all the way down to like a 675, as opposed to someone who has a 500 credit score, it would only lower it to like maybe 480, because of for some reason, that's just the score amount of how it goes. The bigger your score, the higher your score is, the bigger the impact is when you have a late payment or default.
So, Sheralyn, tell me then what your firm, Tier 1 Credit, uh, is going to do. What services do you offer based on this conversation?
So we offer, of course, I offer credit repair. So for anyone who has negative items on their credit report, whether it's late payments, repos, any collections or charge-offs, we help in aiding removing them from the credit report. There's also the fact where while we're removing certain things, we also help rebuild your credit score, because believe it or not, even if we remove negative items from your credit report, it's your credit score can still lower, because these are accounts, whether they're negative or positive accounts, these are still accounts that are on your report and help you make up a credit score. So we replace them with positive accounts. So we help rebuild your credit score while we're also removing negative items. And we also help people who don't even have a credit score get started with building credit. As far as that, we also educate. I'm very big on educating my clients, whether they want to be compliant or not. I just like to offer education on credit repair, because maybe, someone maybe can't afford to do credit repair. And this is the reason why, like I like to teach and show people how to do it on their own if needed. So we offer a lot of financial education, literacy on how to repair their own credit as well. But then, the credit repair is here for me to do it for some people who just, don't want to grasp it, or they just don't have the time. They have a lot of things going on. We offer the credit repair service as well. So there's do-it-yourself credit repair, or, full service credit repair and education on it. So as well as that, like there's a lot of people that are not so ready to move forward because they feel like they have too many negative items. So we help them go through that process. We also help people who want to establish a business and think that their credit is going to stop them from going forward. So we also help with that as well. You don't need to have perfect credit to get started with a business and get business credit. So we're really big on educating people on what their options are. And once they have credit, what they can do with their credit to utilize it. They got to use, their credit to their advantage as well to progress for their family or for themselves. So that's what we kind of offer here.
So, Sheralyn, with all that, how do I obtain, or how do you obtain an accurate credit report? Where would one go to get that?
Sure. So the one location I like to offer people is you can get your annual credit report at least once a year. I believe now with COVID, you can get it every month. But it's annualcreditreport.com. I can provide a link at some point. So annualcreditreport.com, you can go in there and download your credit report for free from each of the bureaus. And that's one way you can kind of get a detailed version of what, negative items or what your credit report is looking like at the moment. So that's the main place I go to. And then there's also Identity IQ, which is sort of my preferred version, where I can also see the reports for our clients so they can retrieve it as well. But it also serves as a monitoring service. At sometimes, it's good to, when you're fixing your credit, you don't want to refrain from getting identity fraud and so on. So Identity IQ is a really good platform to use, so you can monitor who's tried to obtain your credit, who's tried to pull your credit report, if anyone has tried to apply for credit under your name. So it's a really good platform to use as well.
So, Sherilyn, on all of that, if I wanted to check your credit score, you wanted to check mine, is that possible? Or do you
No, no,
need,
no.
no?
No. Well, working as a client, if you want me to look over your credit report, you would have to provide me your login details so I can log in and check your credit report and then go over the credit report with you, of course, with consent.
So, how long would it take a credit repair process from the time someone engages your services to say, "Hey, I'm in better shape now"?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a question I get a lot. So it all depends on everyone's accounts are different. So I like to tell people upfront, it all depends. Certain creditors, certain debt collectors are more aggressive than others. Some of them are more lenient as far as understanding that they've reported certain items inaccurately. So I typically like to tell people, if you're looking to commit to credit repair, look at a commitment of at least 4 to 6 months, depending on what they have going on. There are accounts that may come off in 45 days, but just to give everyone an idea, I like to give a time frame of 4 to 6 months, especially if you are building credit and have a lot of negative items on your report. That can take a while because, again, creditors and bureaus have at least 45 days to respond to a lot of our challenges that are being sent to them. So that process can take, again, every 45 days is when we would go ahead and look for results and respond to any results that we do get. So I like to tell people to commit about 4 to 6 months, because the credit did not get messed up overnight. So we can't expect to fix it
Good.
overnight.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Sherilyn. So Sherilyn, you talked about different platforms or different credit scores or different ways to do it. Suppose I get a good credit score from one and not the other. Do they vary great differences or no?
So that goes back to the two scoring models that I was referring to. So it is the FICO scoring model and Vantage scoring model. So you can obtain your FICO score from myfico.com. That is my preferred one. It's the most accurate. And that I usually recommend to clients who are looking to purchase a home, because mortgage lenders utilize the FICO scoring model. Now, the Vantage scoring model is usually utilized by regular banks like Chase or JP Morgan, and sorry, JP Morgan is Chase, Bank of America, so on. For credit cards from those type of locations, they like to use the Vantage scoring model. So this is why when you may go apply for a car or a home, your identity IQ might say that you have a 670, and then you go to apply for the car or the home and they say that you have a 620. It's because of the scoring model that's being utilized and pulled to get that credit score. So again, it's totally up to the lender what scoring model they're going to use, but that's why you might get two different scoring models. And that's why Identity IQ is great for monitoring and to get your Vantage scores, but my FICO is utilized to get your FICO score. So depending on what you're looking for, you might want to utilize either of the two.
And you would help in that area.
Yes.
So this is a good question. I don't even know how many credit cards should the average person have? Is it based on your wealth, or how many? I mean, I only have two.
Ideally, yes. So ideally, when you are starting to build credit, and if you want to get your profile to have a strong profile, you only need to have two credit cards, one short installment, one long installment, and keep your utilization under 10%. So say, for instance, if you have a credit card of 5,000, you do not want to use more than $50 on that credit card a month, just so you can show that you know how to utilize the credit that's been given to you. They like to see 10% or lower. So that's usually the main thing you need when starting credit. Of course, you can open up more credit cards. There's no such thing, but you don't want to apply for too much credit at the same time. If you're going to apply for credit, you don't want to usually it's 2 years. You don't want to have more than 4 to 5 applications for credit within 2 years. Maximum is 4 or 5 across each bureau. Because some credit cards might pull from Experience, some might pull from Equifax. You don't want to have more than 5 within the 2 years as far as applying for credit.
So Sherilyn,
establish credit and raise your credit score.
Sherilyn, when
It's
you're
not
talk
just
no, when you're talking about credit cards, do you mean like American Express or Mastercard, or do you mean like Bloomingdale's and Saks and all of these stores as well? Do you bunch them together or no?
yeah, they're all considered credit cards. But again, that's why I say you want to choose wisely where you go. Retail credit cards are okay, but you want to choose wisely which ones you use because you don't want to like I don't want to say waste an inquiry on something that's like a low limit if you're going to improve your credit score. So retail cards are okay. I personally don't like to utilize them because it's a waste of an inquiry on my end. But if it's to build someone's credit, you would do it. I would just not do so many retail credit cards and try to go for bank cards, credit union cards, or like you mentioned, American Express and so on. Those are the good elite cards you want to go to when you have good credit and you want to continue building your credit. But in order to establish the credit, you don't need to start off with those first
Okay,
few cards.
Sherilyn, how about if you're bankrupt? Can you be rehabilitated?
I'm sorry,
I
I
said
didn't hear you.
if you filed for bankruptcy, can you be rehabilitated?
Yes. So a lot of people think that there is not life after bankruptcy, but there is. The bankruptcy, yes, it can be a negative item on your report, and it could maybe deny you certain things, but you can still build credit. Like I said, there's credit builder cards, there's secured credit cards. If you're denied, there is still ways to add positive reporting history and still obtain a credit score and increase your credit score while you have a bankruptcy on there.
So how should somebody respond if they start getting phone calls from a debt collection agency? Do they hang up?
So yeah, so one thing I would say when you get phone calls from debt collectors is always ask them to communicate any information to you in writing. The moment that a debt collector places a call, they have actually 5 business days to send you any communication or correspondence in the mail from the date of that phone call. Always choose to have everything in writing because that way you protect yourself as a consumer when you're disputing any type of collection or negative item.
Should never do it over the phone.
No, always say communicate with me in writing.
And suppose we talked a lot about personal bankruptcy, personal credit cards. What about a business that's looking to establish credit? Suppose they start off not so good. How do they build themselves back up? Can you help them?
So with business credit, there's 2 ways. There's what's called personal guarantee and non-personal guarantee. So non-personal guarantee means that you are not utilizing your social security card to obtain business credit. So the way that works is by opening vendor accounts under your business name that don't require your social security number. And that way you can still build business credit without using your social security number while you're fixing your personal credit. And that does take time. It takes a little bit longer as opposed to someone who has their credit up to par and ready to apply directly with like American Express Business or so on, where they do pull your social security card. So if you're looking for higher amounts, you definitely want to have a good credit score because they are going to pull your social security card. Now, the ones if you're still working on building your credit, we go through tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 vendor accounts. These are like stores that provide you office supplies or medical supplies. And then you start building a relationship with them. And once you start reporting history after about 2 or 3 months, you'll start developing a business credit score. And that is what's going to help you over the course of about 6 months to build a good business credit score so you can get higher limits without using your social security card as well.
Sherilyn, I really want to thank you for being on the show. How can people contact you before we close?
Sure. So I can definitely accept phone calls at my business line. It's 877-894-5124. Or they can definitely send me an email at consultations@t1prosolutions.com.
Sherilyn, you've been extremely informative, well knowledgeable, and extremely learned in this subject. And I really thank you for taking the time to join us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For Sherilyn, this is Mayor Chris Bollwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City. Thank you for joining us.